Welcome to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. I'm your host, Alexander Toth. Today we're tackling another marketing myth, which is that results should be cheap and fast. Now, this one, my understanding of where people come from here is that this isn't something that they would necessarily say to a friend. They wouldn't want to kind of get caught holding this belief. But it's there. And where we see this come up most often is when I'm having a conversation with somebody who is started paying for marketing, whether they're paying a team member, they're paying an agency. So now they've got skin in the game. And suddenly they want cheap and fast results. So let's talk about this. And just like our other marketing myths, we're going to go through what's attractive about this, what's the truth, and what you can do about it. The attraction of this myth is pretty obvious. If I'm spending money, I want to make money fast. I want to make a lot of money. And there's a lot of marketing, quote, gurus out there who are helping to push this belief forward. Why? Because they're in marketing. And if they can hook you with a myth like this, that you can make $1 million in 30 days or something like this, you're going to buy their product. And then once you're in, they might tell you the truth that, hey, actually, if you want to make $1 million in 30 days, you have to have been building your brand for 5 or 10 years, right? But it's this attractive idea. Now, if we're not spending money on marketing, it's easy to say, no. There's no such thing as a get rich quick scheme. But once we're putting money down and we're paying and we're seeing that money exit our bank account, suddenly things change a little bit. We want those cheap and fast results. So it makes sense to me how people end up here, and I do not fault anybody. It's stressful to be spending money on something that isn't yet making money. So the question then is, what results can or should we expect from marketing? How fast and how large should those results be? And the answer has multiple parts to it. So the first part of the answer is this. First thing, you got to pay with your money or your time. Like, this is the basic principle that you should be approaching your marketing with. The more money or time you pay with, the more results you'll see. So what does that look like? Well, if you start dumping tens of thousands of dollars into ads, for example, you are going to see a faster return on investment than if you're dumping $100 per month into ads. At the same time, if you hire, and this would still kind of feel like money, but we can talk about it like time. If you have all of your team devote all of their time to marketing, you will see results faster than if one person devotes 1 hour per week of their time to marketing. So this might seem intuitive, which it is. But Stephen Covey says common sense is not common practice, and I agree. So keep this in mind as we're going through the rest of this. You have to pay for marketing. You have to pay to get the return on investment. And you're either going to pay with your money or your time, or possibly both. Now, let's look at the different aspects of marketing. So the first thing a lot of folks think about with marketing is social media. Now, I've got a whole podcast episode on social media where I go into the data, and I'll give you the short summary here. Social media, there isn't a clear strategy, and there are not clear, consistent results. in the data, there's a wide range of possible results, even within one industry with very similar behaviors. Some people doing these behaviors will see almost no results, and some people will see great results. This is the problem I have with social media, is we see someone go viral and we think we can do that. What we don't see are all of the people who are doing the exact same things as that person who didn't go viral. Which means that that strategy is not yet bulletproof. In general, there is a net positive with social media. So what that means is there is a bit of an increase in sales, but there isn't a clear picture of how much you can or should expect from social media. There's just too many factors, and the one set of behaviors can get wildly different results depending on the person, right? I mean, one of the easiest ways to get likes on social media is to take your clothes off. And a lot of folks have figured this out. So they post a lot of things in skimpy outfits, whether they're men or women. So apart from that strategy, there is not a clear strategy with social media. So I'm not even going to talk about expected results there. It's just not clear enough to go that direction. Should you be engaging in social media? Yes. Like I said, there is a slight net positive impact on your overall brand. Now, there are 3 activities that do consistently get return on investment. So let's look at those 3. We'll spend most of this episode talking through those. We're going to talk about them in terms of the speed of results and the amount of results. So in the short term, and this is what most folks want, they want short-term results. If you want results now, you have to go with ads. With ads, you are buying attention. You're buying clicks and eyeballs on your ads. Now, this is where you have to pay with money or time, right? If you want more results, you've got to spend more money. One of the biggest problems with ads, though, is the ROI. The average for Google and Facebook, Google's been very clear about this, Facebook a little bit less so, it's about 2 to 1. So that means for every dollar that you spend, the average is that you'll make back $2. Now, I don't know any businesses where that makes sense. And this is the problem with ads. On the front end, when you launch your ads, your return on investment is going to be worse than it will in 6 to 12 months because we have to learn a lot. You have to learn what is the appropriate audience to be targeting, what are the right keywords, what are the right interests, whether it's on Facebook or Google. There's a lot of moving pieces, there's a lot of factors to target here. And as we learn and optimize, the return on investment gets better. But at the beginning, I wouldn't expect a whole ton. In fact, when we're taking on clients, we recommend that you think about the first few months like learning. You're paying for information in the first few months rather than knowledge, or rather than results. So we actually typically start with a little bit of a smaller budget and we'll ramp up as we learn and say, this works. Here's the anticipated ROI. Here's our plan to increase the ROI. And then we'll increase the budget accordingly once we've figured out a bunch of stuff. Now, Google has a lot less moving pieces than Facebook. So Facebook, you're also involving creatives. And Google has the display network where you'd be involving creatives. Like you'd have to get design in there. You're using images for those ads. People mostly think about those types of ads on Facebook and Instagram, though. So with Facebook and Instagram, you have audiences, you have interests, you have locations, you have income levels, you have the creative itself, and what designs and what colors and what fonts and what stock photos or what pictures that you had professionally done are you going to include. There's so many options. And so at the beginning, the ROI is not that great. But the idea that you have to pay with money or time is still true. You could still go in and drop 10, 50, 100 grand on ads in month 1. And you're going to learn a lot faster than if you drop $1,000 on ads in month one. But you still have to learn. And then as we learn, we can increase the return on ad spend. And even then, I would really temper your expectations with ads. It is possible to see some really incredible returns on investments after you've done the learning, especially if you're selling items that are a little bit pricier. So we've worked with commercial cleaning services. We've worked with wedding venues. These things cost more than like a supplement that you might buy online. So in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss actually breaks down the numbers of what he would expect. So that could be an interesting resource. The 4-Hour Workweek, if you haven't read it, it actually basically goes through how to build a passive income business. It's a really fascinating book. But there is an anticipated cost for ads. And so part of Tim Ferriss's suggestion in the 4-Hour Workweek is to build all of that in to your pricing. So he made his initial money on a supplement company, and then he wrote a book about it. That's the 4-Hour Workweek. And with the supplement company, most people are marking up the cost of the supplement by like 2 to 4 times, and he's recommending to go as high as like a 10x markup. Why? So that you can afford the ads. So depending on what your company does and what you're selling and the cost, you might see a very different return on ad spend. If you're selling a $30,000 event space, that is going to be an absolute different return on ad spend than a $25 supplement. So there's part of that to keep in mind here. And part of this is, what is your pricing and what can you afford? Early on, having a bigger budget for marketing and ads makes a lot of sense. Now, I've talked about budgeting in the past, so I won't go too far here, but the basic principle with budgeting for marketing is that your marketing budget is inversely related to your market share. So the smaller you are, the smaller your market share, the greater your marketing budget needs to be. Your marketing budget is an indicator of your growth plan. So the faster you want to grow, the bigger your marketing budget needs to be. So HubSpot, 50% of their revenue goes to sales and marketing. And I know this because they're a public company and they post their earnings online. 50% goes to sales and marketing. That's incredible. That's a company that wants to grow. Now, a lot of folks are trying to push their marketing budget as small as possible. Your marketing is an engine for your growth. And so my minimum suggestion for a marketing budget is 10%. That's absolutely minimum. At ClearBrand, we've been hovering around 25%. But I think depending on what you're selling, and how fast you want to grow, there is room to go up. I mean, 50% to me makes a lot of sense if you want to grow fast. And that's where ads come in. Ads are that short-term, high-cost return on investment space. So the myth we're debunking here is results should be cheap and fast. They're not going to be both. They will be, in the case of ads, they will not be cheap, but you can have fast results with ads. Now, I said that there's 3 activities that get ROI. Ads is the first one, and I'm including social media ads here, and that's sometimes confusing for folks. Social media, posting on social media is different from running ads on social media. So running ads anywhere, whether it's social media or Google, wherever you're running ads, that is itself a bucket that is expensive but can get results fast. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, and you turn on notifications. Turn on that little bell. Will notify you the next time that we have a podcast. This also makes it easier for other folks to find this content. So if you found it helpful, like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. The next activity that gets ROI is email marketing. Email marketing requires that you have email addresses. Otherwise, you have no one to email. So because of that, I consider email marketing to be kind of a mid-range. If we're going to go from short-term to mid-range to long-term results, email marketing is mid-range because you have to gather email addresses to use it. Now, once you have email addresses, the average numbers that I've seen for email marketing are somewhere around 38 to 1 ROI. So you're collecting email addresses and you're emailing people who maybe downloaded a lead magnet, or you're emailing people who purchased from you in the past. You're getting them to purchase again. And as I talked about last week, we're using emails to increase mental real estate, to increase people's the boxes that they put us in their mind, right? If we're thinking about the mind as kind of a massive grocery store that's split up by problems and uses, and you go to the right section to pull one off the shelf when you need it, we want to be expanding our mental real estate, and email is a great way to do that. So email has a decent ROI, 38 to 1. That's a great, fantastic ROI, but you have to have emails to do it. The other thing to consider with emails is that the cost is actually really cheap. Once you have an email, you pay somebody to write an email. It should take no more than 30 minutes at the longest to write an email, a few hours to write an email sequence. And this is, I think, why the ROI is so high, is the cost is just outrageously low. I'm not entirely positive on how these numbers were attained, but it seems to me that the cost of email marketing would mostly just include the cost of writing the emails and then the return from that. So that's, in my estimation, why it's 38 to 1. If we're including the cost of generating those email addresses, the ROI probably goes down, especially if you're going to use ads to generate those email addresses. Because then you're paying, depending on your ads, maybe a few cents, maybe a few dollars, maybe $10 per lead, per email address. And now we're going to have to add that into our calculation. Suddenly the ROI is decreased a little bit because we had to go through the process of gathering the email addresses. But if you have email addresses and what you're doing is you're writing a short email to send to your list to remind them that there's something in their cart that they left behind, or to get them to buy another one of your products, that's very profitable. Lots of ROI there. You just have to get the email addresses. Now, the third activity that gets a consistent return on investment is SEO. Now, SEO stands for search engine optimization. This is a big topic. Typically, what this means is we are bringing people to our website organically. So they're going to Google, mostly Google. Last I checked, 92% of searches happen on Google. So people are going to Google, they're searching for something, and your website shows up in the results. That's the idea here. So how do we do that? Some of the activities are blog writing. That's a great, huge activity for what would be called content marketing or inbound marketing. The idea is you're writing this content that's incredibly valuable. People find it online. They come to you. Now they're on your website. Now they can discover the things that you sell. Awesome. Great strategy. Now, it's a little bit harder than that, though, especially today as the internet is getting more and more full. There's more and more competition. But if we think about the costs there, and this is why it's long term. So we would either write the blog article ourselves, or we would pay, as a business owner, you can pay to have it written, hiring a marketing agency or something like that. So the cost of a blog isn't that much, given the fact that it is going to stay on the internet potentially forever. Depending on how long you leave it up there, there's no reason to bring it down. You can update it over time. So depending on who's writing this, if it's a team member, it's going to take a few hours. If it's an agency or a content writing company, they might charge, $500 to $1,000 or $1,500. If it's a well-known copywriter, they might charge more than that. But it's staying on the internet forever. And so every single person who finds that article and buys Now their purchase is counting towards that ROI. So this is a really long-term strategy. You don't write a blog article and then immediately show up on the first page. So that's part of why this is long-term. The other part of why it's long-term is because we're going to be adding up the ROI forever, basically. So that's part of why I like blogging, though, is it stays there forever. Now, once you have a blog, though, how do you get Google to notice you? Well, let's say you're going to go on a blind date, but nobody you know knows this person who you're going to go on a blind date with. I mean, not only does that not really excite a person, but that kind of feels like, am I even safe going on this blind date, right? So that's the first problem that we've got to overcome with Google. Google doesn't know you. Google's never heard of you. Why would Google trust you? You might be a spammer, right? You might be trying to slip scammy links into these articles for all Google knows. So how does Google trust you? So one is by writing good authoritative content. And Google's AI is always getting better at figuring this out. So you want to write good articles with high value that are complete content. And because Google has access to all of the internet, it can generally fact check what you've got going on in your article. The next piece, though, is referrals, basically. If I was going to go on a blind date and I had 10 friends all say, wow, that person's amazing, I am much more likely to trust that person. Same thing with hiring an employee, right? You want to call references and see, hey, that they said good things about this person, I'm going to trust them more. So how do we do this with Google? It's with links. Google is looking at the number of links and the websites that have those links that are sending people to your website. So if another website in your industry that's authoritative has a link on their website that sends people to yours, think about that like a reference, right? That is that website saying your website is trustworthy. So the more links you get, the more trustworthy Google thinks you are. So this strategy here is called link building. And this is a foundational part of what we do at ClearBrand. It's huge for building that trust. Now, we measure that trust with a term called domain authority. So programs like SEMrush, they'll actually display your domain authority and you can see where you're at. So the higher your domain authority, the more Google and the internet trust your website. And that means they're going to display your blogs and your landing pages and your website higher in search results. So that's a big part of this SEO strategy. The last part is making sure that all of this is set up correctly. So you want to make sure that you've got your headings are appropriate, your images have alt tags. We've got an article on this and a podcast on SEO. So I'm not going to go too far in depth here. But if you go to clearbrand.com/podcast, you type into the search bar SEO, you'll find this article, this podcast on SEO with clear instructions on what to do. And that's going to contribute to Google's understanding of your website. So this is a really long-term strategy, and especially if you're starting from zero. And this is where some of the conversations with clients or prospects or even friends of mine, they can get a little difficult because people want results fast, right? That's the myth we're busting today is results should be cheap and fast. They're not going to be both. So SEO in terms of return on investment, it's a higher return on investment. It's a very long-term return on investment, which means that the overall cost for that return on investment is cheaper, right? The cost for those sales is cheaper with the SEO, but SEO takes a lot of momentum to build up. If you're starting from zero, it's going to take a while to build up that momentum, to start writing lots of blog posts. In fact, I've seen some folks kind of reverse engineer it where they've seen somewhere between 500 and 700 page views or users on average per blog article. So that means if you want to arrive at thousands of users or page views per month, you're going to need tens or dozens or hundreds of blog articles to hit your traffic goals. And then those traffic goals can translate into lead goals, which can translate into sales goals. But it's going to take a long time to build up that amount of blogs and to build up that trust with Google. So SEO is a long-term, it's a cheap but long-term strategy. It's not going to get you fast results, but it will get you really incredible results in the long term. So it's a great part of the strategy. So when we're putting together a strategy at ClearBrand, we are balancing these three primary aspects of the strategy. We do want to be engaging in SEO so that we're investing in the long-term cheap results, but we also want to be engaging in ads so that we're getting results in the short term, acknowledging that they're going to be more expensive results. With email marketing in the middle, email marketing is basically making ads and SEO more profitable. If you're bringing people to your site with ads and SEO, not all of them are going to buy. In fact, last week, I talked about how 28% of our sales qualified leads went through, at least it got received a few emails before they booked with us. Now, 28% might not seem like a huge amount, but imagine if 28% of your revenue was gone. That's the power of email. Increasing the value of everything else that you're doing. So we actually normally like to establish an email strategy either at the same time as or before our SEO and ads start happening. And the reason is, if we're running those ads, I want to be maximizing the return on investment there. If we have 100 people come to the site and 28% of them are not going to buy unless they receive a couple emails, I want to make sure we're sending them emails. That's really going to ramp up the results that our clients are seeing. So I'd recommend that for you. So emails are not really a standalone thing. SEO is and ads are, but emails are going to make everything else much more profitable for you. So the myth today was results are cheap and fast. They're not. They're either cheap or fast. Anybody who's saying they're going to be cheap and fast, they're just trying to sell to you, right? I can't think of anything in the world that is going to be cheap and fast. So cheap and fast, nope, but cheap or fast, yes. And that's why we approach marketing with this holistic strategy to have the short-term but expensive and the long-term but cheap wrapped up in one strategy together. So what can you do with this information? Well, now you've got some decisions to make. Depending on how much money or time you have, you can choose one of these. I would personally, if I'm going to spend money or time, I'm going to start with ads, email, or SEO. I'm not going to start with social media. Again, the results are just inconsistent enough that I wouldn't feel comfortable starting there. I would build out ads, email, and SEO first, and then add social media after that. Now, I know a lot of folks are going to disagree with me on that. But again, we're data-driven at ClearBrand, and sometimes the data just does not scratch our egos in the way we want. Sometimes the data does not agree with what we have perceived to be true. And at ClearBrand, we're going to rely on that data. So I'm not against social media, but I think it should be worked into the strategy later. If you've got a big marketing budget, great. Do all four at the same time. Ads, email, SEO, and social media. But if you're going to have to cut something out, I would cut out social media first. And I would choose between these other three depending on where you're at with your company. If you need results tomorrow, go with ads. If you've got the time, and maybe we talk to a lot of folks who have zero digital marketing, but they get all of their clients or customers through referrals and word of mouth and things like that. Great. If you're already getting sales through one avenue, you've got the time to engage in SEO. Now, part of my question, whenever we're building out a strategy, is what happens if one of these avenues of leads and sales dried up? So, for example, referrals and word of mouth. You have no control over that. You have zero control over referrals and word of mouth. That could dry up, number one. If you're doing a good job, it probably won't. But number two, You cannot scale that. That's the other problem with relying on referrals and word of mouth. But if you are getting a decent number of referrals and word of mouth and you're happy with that, I would say you could start with SEO. You've got more time. You can spend on this marketing activity that is going to deliver big results over time. Now, I would not expect to see those results for 6 to 12 months after you've been consistently engaging in this, right? This is not a write one blog article and call it good. This is write a blog article per week for a year and see where you've gotten. Get those links, right? And we've got strategies for link building. So get those links. You email folks to see if they'll give you a link to their site. A lot of folks these days are charging for links, which Google doesn't like, but Google doesn't have any way of figuring out whether you bought a link or not. But link building can be costly because of that. You're either going to be trading a link with somebody or you're going to be buying that link. You can build up your SEO without it. It's just going to take longer. So again, you're either going to pay with money or time. So you could go buy 500 links and that'll speed up your SEO strategy. That's just going to cost a little more money, right? So if you've got a solid flow of leads already, it might make sense to go with SEO. If you need a ton of leads tomorrow, it might make sense to go with ads. And then email marketing is just going to make everything else a bit more profitable for you. Once you have all three of those in place, after that, if you have the budget or the time, then add in social media. And again, the way that I see social media based on the data that I've reviewed, and you can go back to the podcast we did on it, it seems to me that net positive is mostly coming from adding to the other things that you're doing. So if you're using your social media to drive people to a free webinar that is then selling something, that would be a good way to use social media. If you're using it to provide value, build up your amount of mental real estate, that's a good way to use social media. But I would not personally use it as a standalone simply because the results do not seem to be there consistently. If you are the unicorn and you are the one who is getting results with social media, I applaud you. That is fantastic. If you don't have social media or you're not seeing the results, you're not alone. And I would not lose sleep over that. I would start with those other three. So that's what you can do to leverage this information. You can go out and you can choose, where do you want to start? Do you want to do all four? Do you want to start with ads? Do you want to start with SEO? Maybe you've already got a bunch of traffic to your site and adding a lead magnet to collect email addresses and then sending some emails their way. That's going to add to the profitability of the traffic you're already seeing. So go ahead and use this info to go out, grow your business with the truth after we busted this myth. Thanks for listening to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. If you liked this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to outsource your marketing to our team, go to clearbrand.com.